Hello, how's everyone doing? Good? All right, my name's Jeff McGuire. I'm the democratically elected first selectman for the town of Kingdom of Andover. Sorry about that. All right, I'm going to open this meeting, but before I do that, I'm going to let everybody know I expect this meeting to be conducted with civility and respect for everybody that's involved. People may sit there and disagree on issues, but I expect civility. Okay? All right. So I'm opening the budget meeting that the electors and citizens qualified to vote in the town meeting in the town of Andover are hereby notified that the annual budget meeting for the town of Andover will be held at Andover Elementary School Gymnasium, 35 School Road on Thursday, April 9th, 2026 at 7 p.m. for the following purpose. To choose a moderator for said meeting, to receive the budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027 as prepared by the Board of Finance, to approve a budget for a referendum for fiscal year July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027, and then to adjourn. Copies of the budget are available at the town clerk's office, online, and are here available if you need one. This meeting is being held today on April 9th, and right now I'm going to turn it over to the Board of Finance and the chairperson, Robert Ingram.
Thanks, everybody. All right, so we'll open up with nominations for a moderator for this meeting.
I nominate Wally Martin.
I'll second.
Okay, Shannon Loud motions. Scott Zoyette seconds. We have anything further? All right. If you can do a vote by hands on this one. All in favor? Congratulations once again, Wally. All right, I want to open up with a presentation that the Board of Finance has created. It'll hopefully give you a rundown of the budget and the context you need to evaluate it. We have a little PowerPoint here. So I'll run through this as quickly as I can so I don't waste any of your time. And when we're done, we'll entertain questions and motions. And just by charter, understand that motions can be made to cut something in the budget, but there's no increasing anything once it's cut. After that, whether they pass or fail, this budget will then proceed to referendum. But if a motion passes, it alters the budget. If it doesn't pass, nothing. All right, so without further ado. So a little rundown of the process. We're going to go through the process of how we put this budget together and how it all came together to create the document that you have in your hands. And we have our revenue, we have a summary, we have a mill rate calculation, which I'll get into a little bit later. It's a little more complicated this year, and some samples to give you context for and what your assessment is, what this budget would do. So, the process. We get preliminary operational capital budgets from all the parts of the town, public works, etc. We get from the Board of Ed as well. We look at all of that. The Board of Finance did review the budget request from AES. We proposed to them that they consider a smaller increase. They explained to us in response that no, they really need that 11%. So they rejected that and brought this budget to this hearing. The board reviewed everything we could on the town side. We held a hearing, where we ran through a draft version of this. This is a little bit expanded from that, if you were at that meeting. And then we have this meeting here, after which we will have the referendum the first Tuesday in May, which is the 5th. So here are the bottom line numbers for this budget. RAM, and that's our levy, our share, which is 12.65%, is $4.25 million, which is an increase of about 3%. The town budget, and this is an aggregated budget, this includes the ops and the capital, it's going up a little under 4%. And the Andover BOE request, AES, they're asking for 10.91. This comes to a total of about 5.4 in expenditure. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the tax increase. Here's the split between the three components of our budget. Town side, about a third. AES is a little bit higher, RAM a little bit lower. And we'll get into the reasons for that as this goes on. So, on the town and the capital side, we had a number of things that we increased. I would say item number 2 is one of the bigger ones, just salary increases. You'll see a lot of 3% increases in there. We also have, as you know probably, some staffing that we're having to bring in, a new administrator, an assistant to that administrator. We've had some turnover, so we're addressing that. We're also trying to build out programs at the community center with its director. And we did make a few small capital cuts this year to try to offset some of this stuff. The other thing the town is facing, and you'll see it on AES as well, is a large healthcare cost increase for our healthcare insurance for our employees. And even those who don't take it, they receive a payment in lieu of, and that is tied to the cost of a single plan they would otherwise take. So that's hitting both the town and the school. The consortium we're a part of, apparently that was the best they could do this year. So this is the town side, again, ops and capital. This 5-year look back. This started as me trying to remind myself where we came from, where we're going. So you can see here a year-over-year change from the last 5 years, and then cumulative number, and then our proposed increase of about 4% this year. If we were to pass this budget over a 6-year period, it would be up 28% on the town side. Board of Ed. So the Andover Board of Education brought their budget in. It's about a $5 million request, as you can see, about 11% increase. They are requesting a new teacher for first grade. They lost, well, they have the school psychologist. Part of that issue is the loss of a grant that was paying for half of that. Contractual salary increases, I already mentioned the loss of grant money. Special education costs, and again, that 21% healthcare premium increase. That hits pretty hard on the school side. Here's the AES budget history. These are the amounts passed for the school budget over the last 5 years. You can see in 2020, we were bottoming out. As you may know, enrollment had declined for years preceding that, and then has started to slowly rebound. So you see some increases last year, as you know, and some of you know, was a 5% increase, originally requested at 8.8, that didn't pass and became 5. So cumulatively over 5 years is 17%. If this were to pass, you come in at just about 30% over 6 years. RAM. So RAM's total budget is $34 million, which we have that 12.65% share. They're going up 3.4. There's a complication this year with RAM in that they recently discovered they had too much money saved up over the years. It's apparently an error that's been running for about 5 years, and they owe the various towns that are part of RAM money back. Our share of that with interest is $258,876.15. We are to get that back in some fashion this year as a reduction in our levy. However, the levy number you see here on this slide is what I would say is the actual number. That is the levy that feeds into their $34 million budget. To take the 258 off confuses the issue, in my opinion, so we left it at that for now. But when we get to the taxation part of this, we take it into account. So our levy, as you may know, is based on a ratio of the students from each town that go to RAM. We are probably close to our nadir in terms of the students we have in RAM versus the other 2 towns. So once again, and this has been happening for years now, our levy percentage dropped. So even though the budget is going up 3.4, our levy does not quite go up 3.4. We're down to 129 students of the roughly 1,000 that are there. This is the levy history for RAM. As you can see, it's down quite a bit, and this has to do not with their budgets going down, but again, the ratio of Andover students to Hebron and Marlin. Now, the proposed increase this year for us is about 3% for our levy. However, again, with that offset, the result is a negative number. So we kind of get a break, but it's a one-shot thing. We're getting 5 years of excess money back, and it's not coming again next year. So just keep that in mind. So over the last 6 years with this budget to pass, they're down, our levy is down, I should say, 18.5%. But On this slide, as you can see, their overall budget is up about 9% over 5 years, and would be 13-ish if we were to pass this budget, if we were to pass the RAM referendum as well. So, we also have to look at revenue, and then figure out what our tax rate's gonna be. Now, there's a Connecticut state law that's been in effect for a while, but we've never run into it before, where motor vehicle mill rate is capped. So if we cross a certain threshold, we have to split the mill rates. We'll get into it a little bit more later, on how I calculated that. And again, this is theoretical. We don't set the mill rate until after a budget passes. Our revenues are up slightly. We get some interest income. We get some grant income. Education cost sharing, now that's not an increase, that's something we get like clockwork every year, and I don't think the amount of it has changed in at least 5 years. It's about $2 million. It's a huge part of our funding that we get from the state. And our permits and fees, when you go to the dump and what have you. So, property tax revenue, that can be affected by, it's not a revalue, so we're not getting a huge change on the grand list or anything like that, but, if houses are built in town, that can increase things. Intergovernmental revenues, that's, I think, the grant money and the ECS and everything like that. Our charges for services and our interest income is estimated about $150. That obviously depends on exactly what the interest rate is in our account. This is a 5-year look back of what we've done via taxation. The amount of money that this town has raised from its residents over the last 5 years. Cumulatively, over 5 years, our taxes have gone up 2.7%. This year, this budget requests 6.7. So if you incorporate that, if this budget were to pass over 6 years, the taxes would have gone up 13.42%. So, last year's mill rate, if you look back the middle column here, as you may recall, is 31.59. That's underneath the threshold for the auto thing. So it was a 1 combined mill rate. That's where we've been for many years. But this budget, if it were to pass, crosses the threshold. And so in order to calculate it, first thing I did is I looked at the auto, calculated the maximum we could get out of that based on that cap, deducted it from the total taxation we would need to fund this budget, and then applied the rest to the remaining grand list of real estate and personal property section, your houses basically. And that comes to 33.5. That would be the real estate number. So, we thought it would be helpful for context to look at what these numbers translate to for your tax bill, depending on how your house is valued. If you see on the left, we have a couple of different examples, and then the mill rate last year, what the mill rate would be this year, again, if this budget passes, and the differential. So if your house is valued at about $350,000, and by the way, in case anybody is unaware, the way it works is your house is assessed. We do an assessment usually about every 5 years. I think it got bumped back 1 year. We'll do it next year, but we do it about every 5 years. They take what your house is theoretically worth on the open market and apply 70% of that, and that becomes your assessment. So if your house is worth $500,000 on the open market, you're assessed at $350,000, and then the mill rate's applied. So you would have paid $11,056 last year. You'd be asking for $11,725 this year, meaning your taxes would go up $668 for your real estate. Cars, much smaller, obviously. We just ran a couple different numbers here again, and you can see the differences are pretty minor. But you would combine the two. I don't know how many cars everybody has in town. I'm fortunate that I have one old car. So, what we're going to do now is we are going to entertain questions. All three boards are up here. So we can have people come up, ask a question. We can also entertain motions. And again, just to reiterate, if a motion passes, the budget is changed and goes to referendum that way. If it doesn't pass, ultimately the budget goes in any event. So, when you come up, we're going to give you a microphone. We're going to ask you to state your name and your address so that the meeting minutes can be reported accurately. I'm going to turn it over to Walt for this part of the meeting. That's my spiel.
Okay, Linda's gonna help me. She's gonna go around with the microphone because in this room, if you don't have the mic, I can't hear you up here. Neither can members of the boards. So if you have a question or a comment, raise your hand, we'll get the mic to you. Gentleman in the back, you raising your hand? I see it's been up for a while. If you could state your name and address when we start so that the town clerk can get it in case we need the information.
And we're trying to keep comments, questions, 3 minutes or less.
Oh, it's really simple. Just hoping, hi, Michael Greenhouse, what else do you need? 155 Hebron Road. Robert, can you go back, I think it was like 2 or 3 slides, just where you said the taxes increase over 5 years was 2.7%, and then you said the proposed is 6.7, and then you're saying over 6 years, 2.7 plus 6.7 equals 13.4%. I was still.
The calculation. I think it was a spreadsheet formula, so hopefully the math is correct, but I will double check it right now. Oh yeah, on my phone.
That was it.
You get to 13.
You can't add percentages together. Well, you can't add 6%, 5%, almost 11%. It doesn't work.
Name and address, please.
Sarah Becker, 20 Mizola Road. I just want to say thank you to the Board of Selectmen, to the Board of Finance, to the Board of Education, and to all the members of the public that are here today. We are all here because we care deeply about our town and about the people. We are also all fortunate enough to live in a place where we are able to express our opinions and make our voices heard, which is not the case in so many parts of the world. This is democracy at work. Now, tonight, we're going to offer some opposing views. We're going to argue. We're going to debate. We're going to disagree. Some of us will have the outcome we desire, and some of us will not. The good news is, this is not the end of this democratic process. Nothing tonight is final. So as we debate, argue, and disagree, let us all please remember that we are all here because we care so deeply about our town, and that we're all neighbors. Let us speak kindly, courteously, and respectfully, so as to model civic engagement for the next generation. Thank you all for being here.
Anyone else? This is unusual.
Who's warming up?
Elizabeth Huska, 72 Pine Ridge. I have been an educator at Andover Elementary School for 19 years. Go on and on about all the amazing things the school has done for children, not to mention the amazing successes that AES graduates have achieved. My guess is some of you already know that, and for others, your minds are already young. So I want to speak tonight as a taxpayer and as someone who represents the people who don't have a voice here. Nearly 20% of the residents of Andover are under the age of 18. They don't vote or have the opportunity to speak at these meetings, but they are directly impacted by these decisions. Year after year, we hear the same thing. The school budget is a burden on taxpayers. Here's the reality. The success of the school keeps our property values up. While the school does need to be fiscally responsible, if you've attended or watched a board meeting recently, then you would know that Andover is the lowest per pupil spending in our peer group. What we need to hear are solutions to tax burden. And we need to hear solutions to the tax burden and real plans to increase the town's revenue. It doesn't sound like a school problem. That sounds like the problem our leadership should be working to address. As taxpayers, we need to change the narrative. Stop asking about preschool and start asking how do we grow our tax base. Our leaders should be seeking economic opportunities rather than pointing fingers. I agree we should be asking our residents, especially those on fixed incomes, to continue bearing the weight while doing nothing to expand the base. Where's the plan to attract new families, new businesses, new revenue streams? At the January Board of Education meeting, when the superintendent proposed the budget with a 1% increase, she recognized that was high and began making suggestions to the school to increase revenue. We should be doing the same thing. And that doesn't have to be a choice between preserving the town's character or supporting the school. Many of us chose to live here for the natural beauty, but preserving what we love doesn't mean doing nothing. Without thoughtful growth, our risk becoming a town that can't sustain itself. Growth doesn't have to mean overdevelopment. It can mean small, intentional steps that strengthen our town while keeping its character intact. So please help me change the narrative. Let us get out of the cycle of cutting the investments that actually make this town attractive.
Really, just like the back to the questions asked earlier, I checked the math, it's right, I know it doesn't look right, but if you just take the bottom line number, the increase to 1.2 million, and you compare it to the, that one, that's how you get 13.42. It is right, so, why?
Questions about the budget. That's what we're here for, to answer the questions about the budget, not personal statement. Basically, everyone has a chance to ask.
Hi, I just have a question about the,
Name and address,
sorry,
please.
down 231 billion. Question about the request for a full-time psychologist. So I'm a teacher, I just want the information. Is it my understanding that you guys had a half-time psychologist and then that grant was lost and now you are seeking a full-time position? Or is it a full-time position grant? Like, I'm just trying to figure out where the full-time position came from.
So she is almost full-time. The hours were increased when we received the grant, but that is what is needed for the amount of hours for testing and for student support. We don't have another person aside from that school psychologist that's providing that support for students. And I believe the grant was it 53,000, 54?
40.
Was it?
44.
44,000 for the past 2 years. So,
Follow-up question, clinical services through IEPs are provided by the psychologist, not by like a school counselor?
Correct, that's correct.
Social worker? So that's the only service provider for that service on IEPs?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next. This is going to be a short meeting. She's coming with the mic.
Kathy DeRozier, 232 Bear Swamp Road. So my question to the Board of Finance is, in the unassigned fund, we have $2.1 million. That's money we've been taxed on. And in this budget, you didn't apply any of that towards a 2.77 mill increase. And I really think you should, and asking you why you didn't do that in this budget.
Sure, I can address that. A couple things. Yes, the last audit shows that we have 2.1 in there. One of the things that we've been working on is, the last audit gets you to June 30th at 25, right? So I'm not 100% certain from then till now if it's up even a little more or what have you. Last year, the board did choose to apply $190,000 on the fund balance, and we didn't do it this year. I would say there's two reasons for that. First is, I remember having a conversation last year before Eric left about the state recommended amount that a town has in reserve unassigned fund balance. And apparently the recommendation is 2 months of the year, 1/6 of your budget, that's 16.67%. The 2.1 million we have is about 15%. Now, as we talked about during that meeting, our town that's a one number for every town in Connecticut and towns vary. Our town doesn't have all the same risks as a town that's in a floodplain on the coast, so 15 may be fine. But there was some concern about reducing it. Also, we thought we should take it to the town, and that is an option we have. Should this budget fail, we could come back to that issue and say, well, maybe we take 100,000 from it. Everybody should just bear in mind, basically the tax increase, the way it works is every 100,000 is a percentage point, roughly. Right? Because if you look at last year's taxes, it's almost bang on 10 million. Right? So we did look at that, we considered that on the board. We had a good discussion on it 2-3 meetings ago, and said, you know what, we didn't feel comfortable putting that in at this stage. But we did think about it.
Can I just?
Go ahead.
So, the state of Connecticut recommends 10 to 15% of the annual operating expenditures. So if we look at what we're looking at this year, 13,684,000 at 12%, that's 1.6 million that we can have or should have in unassigned funds. That's at 12%. At 10%, it's 1.3 million. We got 2.1. This is money we've been taxing, and I'm for the budget. You did a great job, but we need to use this money, is my opinion.
All right, the only thing I'll say to that is, I'm not sure where the disconnect is between the old, I do remember the 12%, 12, 15, something like that being the recommendation. And I was a little surprised when Eric said last year that he had heard that the recommendation from, it's probably OPM, had gone up to that 2/12, 1/6 number. So I'm a little uncertain as to what the state of the art is on that. It used to be, many years ago, some of you may remember, we deliberately drew down our amount because we had so much saved up that we were being told that at the state level we might have a problem getting grants. So I'm always trying to right size that, honestly, and I'm happy to look at it again, and we need to go there. But at the same time, one thing to keep in mind too is we have our money, a lot of our money, not every fund, in the state STIF account. It's called a STIF account. It's the savings account the state sets up for towns to use and provides actually decent interest as opposed to what we used to do in the past. If we had our money in checking accounts, it made nothing. So that interest income you saw in my presentation of about 150 a year, that's predicated on how much money we've got in there at savings rate. We draw it down, we also affect that income stream. So it's kind of a balance, but I hear you. Thanks for the question.
Over there, Wanda.
Hi, I'm Melanie Brooks, 55 Solar Road. I'm looking over the budget and I see a transportation increase of 27%. So I just didn't know if you can go into that a little more and why you can't take part of that increase and give it to the school. 27% seems really high when Andover's only asking, that Board of Education is only asking for a little over 11.
Bear with me one second. So unfortunately, I did not get a copy of that. I do remember something like this. Can you just tell me which section that's under that you're looking at?
Actually, she was looking at the school budget. So,
Oh, it's the school budget. I apologize. It's like, why am I looking at the town budget form? Yeah. All right, hold on a minute.
Have we looked at that line item in the school budget? Yeah. Yeah? I'm asking the Board of Education, Board of Finance now, have you looked at that line item in the budget?
It's in there.
It's in there. Okay, so listen, I'm just gonna tell you, we've had a lot of stuff going on in town. I'm not sure if everybody's aware. Town administrator, treasurer, assistant to the treasurer. So there's a lot of things going on. And I don't think we should be looking at, as Kathy Rogers was asking about, how to pay for this budget. We should be looking at how to sit there and financially, fiscally handle this budget. Because it's not just this year that this will be an issue, it will be next year. And for everyone here who thinks that I might be against education, that's far from the truth. What I have a problem with, and honestly I've had a problem with this for years, is that the pre-K, which is daycare, just let us understand it's daycare, it's daycare. Daycare, I'm just telling you, no, this is my issue. Here's my question. Here is my question. I have been told for multiple years that that part of the school, that part of the budget is covered 100% by grants and tuition. I have asked the question multiple times if it is covered 100%. I'm asking the Board of Education that. Does the tuition and the grants cover 100% of that cost?
Can we have the Board of Ed actually talk about the transportation number?
Yes.
You know,
I won't address those comments, Rob. I will absolutely address what you just asked me to, which was the question that was at hand. Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. And the question at hand was about transportation. I think you're confusing the fact that, yes, the school does rent a vehicle from the town, but it doesn't appear in the town's budget, it appears in ours. You are absolutely right. We do offer, we have special transportation. And I think that might be the confusion, is that we don't use that vehicle for free. We're charged $3.50 a mile for that. And because we are, that is added to that. So that is the transportation costs for the children to take the bus, as well as special education costs. And any student that is outplaced, we're also responsible for those transportation costs. So what you're looking at under transportation is our transportation costs for students that go elsewhere, the transportation costs to get kids here to Andover Elementary School, and the rental of the town vehicle to cover the transportation costs here for special education services. That was the difference there. Thank you.
Valerie, can I follow that up with, what was the cause for it to have gone down so much from 25?
We follow procedure. When you have a question, raise your hand, please. We call on you. This lady up here in front, Kennedy.
That same question. You gonna do it, or you gonna?
Over here.
Over here. No, go ahead.
She's deferring.
Okay.
Anna Josh from 260 Bear Swamp. I'm asking to see, I think it's reasonable to see line item salaries for teachers for where we get bottom line. So bottom line for teachers, it says what the salaries recommended. So I'm asking for a bottom line of where that number came from. I think that's a reasonable request. I don't think that number came out of the air. I sure hope not. And along similar lines, I think it relates to the question related to preschool, which was an unreasonable, I think, answer in booing from the crowd when we were asked to all be respectful of each other. It's a mathematical question as to what money is coming in and whether the money that's coming in covers all of the expenses for that particular program for the school. So I think it's reasonable to see the numbers, line items for where that number comes from. People might be adding things correctly. I think town residents should be able to see line items for where the bottom line is, which line items are totaling the bottom line. It's not an unreasonable request. And it was stated that you're not, with respect, not going to answer that question. Are you choosing not to answer that question because you don't want to? Are you choosing because you're barred to answer that question, or because you don't have that information? That question is related to the preschool question. But to my request to see the line items for the total salaries for where that bottom number comes from, I think that's a very, very reasonable request. So I understand that you may not have that on hand, obviously, but line items, I'm sure were added to a spreadsheet somewhere to get to a bottom line. So if we're trying to be fiscally responsible and understanding where those numbers are coming from, I think the public should be able to see line items for getting these totals.
So yours was a very valid question, thank you, and you asked it respectfully, so I appreciate that. I will answer your question because it was a question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you'll notice if you look at the town budget and our budget, it is not, none of it's separated out where you see the 5 public works workers, what they do. So on our side, you wouldn't see every single teacher.
I would request that then of the town in general, every single line item for where those totals are coming from then.
So I hear that requested next year, that is what the Board of Finance requests, absolutely, by all means, everybody together.
Why for next year, why not for this year? Why can't it be done for this year? We have a month before we go, well, I would hope, to vote. So why can't we see those? Where did the number come from?
Well, that I will explain to you, that's where I was getting with that. But if that's the request of the Board of Finance this year for them to see teacher number 1, teacher number 2, public works person number 1,
Yes.
that is what they requested, that's what would have been done. Let me answer your question, I would be glad to. When the salary line items are put together, we start every year at 0. And what we do is we list the employees, Jody and I, should start with our finance person. We do what's called a salary projection. We start that in November. And we look to see what we project for what the salary, what the employee number is, what the roles are, first grade teacher, second grade teacher. We look then at the contracts. We have negotiated contracts with every single member of the school community. We look and see, is this person moving up to step 2? Did they go from bachelor's to master's? Step 1, step 2. We create a spreadsheet then, and that spreadsheet is a projection, a salary projection spreadsheet. That is where we get that number from. That is absolutely the proper way to do it. We start again every year because we want to make sure that that projection sheet is accurate. And where those numbers come from are the contracts that have been negotiated. And we're very lucky because our teacher's contract is been negotiated, so we know 3 years out from now what we can expect. In non-cert, we're 3 years out from now, we know what we can expect. So that is very helpful. In terms of the preschool salaries, I urge you to look back at all the financials from the Board of Education meetings, because every single Board of Education financials has one every month that tells you, we bring in tuition $249,000, $6,000 a child. We also are the recipients of the Early Start, which used to be called School Readiness Grant. And we are the recipients of a Smart Start grant. So if you add up the 2 grants, as well as the $249,000, there's $435,000 that comes in. That is where those 8 salaries are paid from. And so I would remind everybody that preschool is not an option. It gets brought up at every Board of Selectmen meeting, every Board of Finance meeting, and every Board of Education meeting. The financials are there. I urge you to look back. Those numbers never change. The only thing you'll see is that there's a word in front of it that says anticipated. It says anticipated because preschool is a different entity from K through 6. If a family decides that they don't want to send their kid any longer to preschool and they pull them out in December, that is no longer revenue for us. If a child turns 3 during the course of the year and they decide that they are coming in, provided we have space, that would be a change in revenue. So the word anticipated is there solely for us to understand that those numbers could change.
So I guess this would now be a question directed to the Board of Finance. Has the Board of Finance asked for a line item spreadsheet from the Board of Education? For not just for teacher salaries, support staff salaries, but for all salaries, to see where these total bottom line numbers are coming from. If we're trying to understand, if we're trying to understand where these total numbers are coming from, has the Board of Finance asked for these line item figures, and have they reviewed them to see that the line items total the bottom line?
All right, I'm gonna let them answer that, but we really used up your 3 minutes, Ben.
So this issue, I personally didn't ask for it because I view that as the Board of Education's primary role. There have been members of our board who have desired more data from the school, but my take has always been that the role of the Board of Education is to put together this budget and explain why they need what they need. And so I had not personally didn't feel the need to have this teacher salary line item disaggregated and show every single line in the same way that we don't typically show, again, public works or anything else like that line by line. We do have it on the town side that we can produce a spreadsheet. But that is the situation between the Board of Ed and Board of Finance. We get a presentation from them during the budget process to say, this is why we're asking for an increase, we're asking to hire a teacher, we have contractual increases, etc., and this is the line that's going on. So no, I did not ask them to give me each teacher's salary.
Is there still time to do so?
Well,
For all
I'd have to work with them on that to see what we can do in
a month, right?
What? Yeah, all right, probably 3-4 weeks. So between now and 5/5.
Make a comment on that, answer.
Good evening and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Doris Maldonado. I live at 33 Cider Mill Road. And my daughters are 8 and 3. While I'm speaking as a parent, I'm also contracted by the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood and Eastern Connecticut University as a parent ambassador for children 0 to 5. Andover's demographics are telling. With a median age of 52, our long-term stability depends on the younger families coming in who choose to move here and stay. Right now, we're last in our region in per pupil spending with over $418,000 in cuts since 2020, even as enrollment is growing. Our families feel this. We want families to stay in Andover because of its potential, and it's a great community to grow our families with confidence. We should not lose enrollment and per pupil state aid tied to our students. How are we protecting our children and our community and future of our town without a competitive school budget? The school building is one of the few public places that serves all of Andover residents, our seniors, our community members, our community groups, our children, and is accessible for people with disabilities. Investing now is...
You have a question? Where is the question?
Yes, how are we protecting our children and the future without a competitive budget?
Is that for the Board of Finance or the Board of Education?
The Board of Finance. Thank you.
Well, I'm not saying that the budget will be brought before you, but it's the one that the Board of Ed believes, in fact, protects the best interests of the kids and against the education we need to take care of. That's the reason it's there.
It's 11% increase. It's 11% increase. It's 11% increase, so I don't understand why you're saying we're not protecting the interests of our students. It's 11% increase they're asking for. Maybe so.
My name is Georgia Conrad. I live at 117 Lakeside Drive. I have a pretty easy question.
Can you get the microphone a little closer?
Now that we have the panels on the roof of the school, shouldn't we see a reduction in electricity? We have solar panels.
I thought there was a projection on it. Hang on a second.
So it's going to take at least a year before we start to see a reduction from that. They are still in the process of interconnecting them, and they're not actually completely active yet. So hopefully next year, yes, we will see a decrease there. Yeah, it's a 0% increase is what we're anticipating. So.
Hi, folks. Scott Zoya, 168 Boston Hill Road. I have a question for the Board of Finance. How do these numbers compare with inflation? Are you done with calculations? These percentage increases here, how do they compare with inflation from the year?
Yeah, so when I first looked at did those 5-year look backs, I did look at CPI, which is the government's inflation calculation. And the average CPI increase over that 5-year period that I have on all those charts was 4.44%, I believe. That's off the top of my head. It's about just about shy of 4.5 each year.
Total 21.5, something like that.
It was higher. It was in the 20s, yes. I don't remember because I don't have that chart up in front of me. I didn't include it with this. It was just frankly not enough space, but yes, that's correct. And as you may remember, we went through some pretty rough years there. We had that one spike, 8-9% inflation, and the CPI calculator picks that up. So if you look at, if you were say went to the Social Security website, they use CPI to calculate their cost of living increases every year, and you'll see it explained there how they do it, and it's very comparable to that as well on the Social Security website. So you can either look it up there, or you can just Google up CPI calculator and look it up yourself. But the increase, if memory serves, per annum average was about 4.4.
Okay, so, but the total is somewhere in the low 20s, if you looked at that bottom number there.
Yeah, I have a chart somewhere, I'd have to.
Right. Bring in the details of the chart. This budget, even with, you know, the large increase in the education budget, the overall budget is still quite a bit lower than the total inflation cost over that same time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, anybody wants to know, I'm gonna pass this around. I've done some of this research, and if you want to see what I found, it's in there. I'll pass this around if you just want to see it. And if you downloaded it before, I just updated it here, so download it again.
Questions?
Good evening, Ron Michaels, Hebron Road. Question is for the board ahead. We're hiring 2 people we're looking for, right? We're hiring for a psychologist in a 6th grade. Is that what we're looking for?
No, we already have a school psychologist. It's the same person that's been doing that job for 3 years now. It's just that about half of her salary was covered by a grant, and the grant is going away. So we are hiring 1 6th grade teacher, is what this budget is asking for.
Okay. The other part of my question is today I was looking online and I saw that there was an occupational therapist position posted the 24th of March for somebody to start July 1st.
Yes, that would be for summer school, for special education, and that's due to retirement.
So the service that we're paying, because it says services that we're paying now, $45,700 for occupational therapy. So is this in addition to that, or is this under that?
It's a totally different area of special education, like physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. They're all separate entities.
That's covered under this budget that you're asking for?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Lawrence. I live at 149 Lake Road. There's a lot of acronyms being thrown around, and as a special education teacher, I think we really should clarify some of this. So I can't clarify it, so I'm going to ask if somebody could clarify IEP, the need for a psychologist in special education, and why we have psychologists, because it's not for medical diagnoses. We're not getting therapy in schools. It's for kids to actually access their education, okay? Which is, by law, what we have to do in a public school, and what an OT is, and why we need an OT in school for a kid to access education with equitable, okay? These are things we need to know, and if we don't know them about education, we should ask those questions, not as to why we have to fund it. So, Valerie, could you please answer those questions?
I will give you the quick version, because I know a lot of people don't have the same interest in special education. The quick version is, yes, in fact, every school has students that have special needs. And some of them you can see, some of them you can't see. Some of them can be taken care of in a regular classroom setting. Some of them can't be taken care of in a regular classroom setting. Some of them require adaptive stuff, technology, equipment, transportation. Some of them don't. Some of them are just academic. But what we are required by law to do is to provide the trained and certified people to administer those services. That is non-negotiable. That is the law. And we do get some funding for things like that, special education funding, and other things we do not get funding for. But it is the law. When we say OT, an occupational therapist, you must be an OT certified person to perform those services. When we say PT, that's physical therapy, you must be a licensed and certified physical therapist to provide those services. There are other areas where you have a choice of support service people. Maybe a social worker could conduct that, maybe a psychologist. We only have one. We have a school psychologist. Most other schools have multiple people that will service these individuals. We only have one person that services them. We have a speech therapist as well, and as an LP. When we say IEP, it's an individualized educational plan. Again, it is a binding legal document. And when a team gets together and decides what that child requires for services, we don't get to say, well, let's talk about that for a second. We may or may not be doing it. As a matter of fact, when we make our schedule for how much we need in OT, PT, speech, we don't just make that up. I don't know, 3 days a week? No. We look at those IEPs, and they very specifically say, this child receives a half an hour 3 times a week. This child receives an hour twice a month. This child receives consultation services. We make the schedules then. And when we make the schedules, it tells us, it dictates to us how many hours of service in a week they need of these services. So some years, we will see a reduction in PT services because we have less service requirements. Other years, we will need more services. And when that happens, I don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We must find somebody to provide those services. It is non-negotiable in every school district, not just Andover. So that is how we would make the schedule for what goes into a budget for all of our special education services. They are mandated. There is no options there for us. Hopefully that answers your question, Ms. Lorenz.
Thank you, Ms. Bobo.
Additional question. Gentleman in the back. I'm trying to get the people that have the closed doors.
Hi, I'm Jose Rivera, 33 Platinum Mill. I know they said to keep the statements to minute. I just want to say that the reason I moved to this town with my family, priority one was to have a good school system. And from what I'm understanding and the experience I've had since we've been here, is Andover per student expenditures the lowest in the region or with our surrounding neighbors. So I think they've met the criteria of doing what they need to do for their annual budget. As to what was said earlier about being the line item for salaries, if that's going to be required from the Board of Ed, that should also be for the town with Public Works. It should be across the board. It shouldn't just be on the Board of Education. Did not appreciate the statement that was made earlier about pre-K daycare. Totally disagree with that. Was very offended by that, having young children. But at the end of the day, Board of Finance does their budget. Everyone does their budget. The question is, what's going to maintain our community, keeping our home values stable? And from my perspective, Andover Board of Ed, from superintendent down, has done an excellent job in what they're required to do. And I support the budget that they've put through.
Question three. That is not have one to you all night. If you've got a question, that's what we're here for, is to answer questions at this point in time.
Well, you've got to get them over here.
We've got a bunch of people over here.
Here you go.
His company.
Good evening, Edward Weingart, 63 Burnett Brook Road. I'd like to call the question.
Okay. Technically, there is no debate going on, this is a question and answer. No one has made a motion, but I'm gonna let our town attorney give his opinion on this.
That's absolutely correct. Nobody's made a motion. Somebody could make a motion to approve the budget. And then, if people want to change it, they could make motions to amend. That's the way it's supposed to work. And you're going to call the question after that. It requires a 2/3 vote, though, to get the vote. Okay? Good enough?
Joey Heber, Arizona Road. I'm not going to make a motion right now. I was going to ask the Board of Finance a couple things. I know that as a former Board of Finance member, I was very interested in how things were going to go this year and wanted to, watch every meeting. I know that at different times you all had different opinions on making some cuts because bringing forward, a 6.7% increase by taxation and then, a really big expenditure increase that the town was going to be married to, you had some options. I kind of want to align with Kathy DeRosa said earlier, it was brought up that maybe you could put some fund balance against it, or a lot of you were in favor of possibly cutting some of the capital funds this year for the town. I don't know if people are aware, but the capital funds, what you see on this budget page is what's contributed to each year, but the town has accounts that have a lot of money already in them, so you wouldn't be bankrupting the town by asking for a small reduction. So I guess my question is, why, to keep the taxation down, why we wouldn't have done that this year in the year of transition when there's probably not going to be a lot of projects going forward?
All right, I'll take this one. So we did make some small reductions in the capital budget. As you saw in the presentation, the capital budget's down a little bit. We try to be judicious with that. The reason is, you're correct, we have a variety of funds in town. And we did, in fact, look at the nearly completed 24-25 audit. And for instance, if you look at the budget, we used to be putting in for several years $50,000 a year into this multi-use building fund. Now, I looked at the audit, and we built up something like $400,000 in that fund. And some of the things that we might have used it for, we've gotten some grant money and what have you. So in the end, after debating it, we decided to zero that out this year. It doesn't mean the fund goes away, it just means we're not going to load 50 grand into it this year. Similarly, we made a small cut, didn't love it, but made a small cut to fire equipment fund because we looked at what we had in there. We looked, we think about the obligations that we have. We have a lease on a truck. I know we have a request coming for a compressor, but we have enough money in there. We thought that we could get away with a small reduction this year in that fund. We did leave a number of these funding levels below. And the reasons for that are as follows. Road work. I think we made a lot of progress over the last 10 years in roads in this town. And I want to keep that going. I think the board was in agreement on that one. We didn't really have any desire to cut that. Specifically also because the 385 you see there, that was a cut last year to try to get a budget through. So it used to be 410. We left the trees alone. Again, I think we've done great work there and it needs to be funded. Bridge and culverts, critical fund. We do have a bunch of money built up in there. You might be fooled by it if you go to look at an audit and say, oh, there's 600 some thousand. The reason for that is Bridge and Culvert Fund is designed to deal with bridge projects in town on our roads, not state roads and whatnot, where we can get grant money, 100% reimbursement. Like when we do Long Hill Road, we're going to ultimately get all our money. A Bridge and Culvert Fund is for those that we get 50-50 grants for. We're on them for half the cost. And I'm being told that something like that, one of those projects could run us $1 million. So we're trying to build that fund up. Cutting that would probably be irresponsible, so we didn't do it. We increased a little bit in open space, but if you look at the chart, you'll see a couple of years ago we put 50,000 in there. We cut it down to 10 last year to get the budget through. And we put it back to 25, not all the way back up. But we think to ourselves, the whole purpose of that fund is to build up some money so that the piece of property were to come on the market that the town can get. We need a mechanism so that we can actually go and utilize it. So we're trying to plan for the future there. So the building maintenance fund was the other one. We got an increased request. I believe that was when we got the budget from the Board of Selectmen, and we decided, yeah, that there's some justification for that. It has to do with town garage work on an old building, that we think we need the funding for. So we did look at the capital funds. It's a little difficult to to cut these things down, knowing that we have these needs 10 years down the road. And I'll just say it one more time about using fund balance to defray the cost of taxation for a year. You can do that, and we've done it in the past, carefully. But bear in mind, it's a one-shot thing, it's not revenue, right? So you have to be careful with it. So that's why we did what we did on the capital budget.
I just want to make one clarification before we go any farther. The motion and debate. Basically, I need a motion to send the budget to referendum. And if that passes, that's the end of the discussion and the debate.
Can I just make that motion? Out of the microphone, Hannah Jordan, Old Coventry Road, and I make the motion to push the budget to referendum.
Second.
Okay, I need name and address of the person making the motion and the person seconding it. Fill this microphone to the bird can hear.
Hannah Jordan, 28 Old Coventry Road.
Second, Mike Greenhouse, 155 Bryn Road.
Okay, at this point, is there any discussion on the motion? No. Hearing none, I'm going to call for a voice vote unless someone objects. All in favor of moving the budget to referendum, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
In the opinion of the moderator, the ayes have it. Therefore, the meeting ended.
I make a motion to adjourn. Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.